Hey, it's Jack. In today's video, I'm going to walk you through step by step how to handle the fear objection as a high ticket sales professional. For anyone who doesn't know who I am, my name is Jack Middleton, and I've spent many years in the trenches as a sales professional, working for some of the world's leading companies, including 2 years at Google. And during my time as a sales professional, I've generated over $5 million in revenue. And really, the goal of these videos is to share the hard won lessons that I learned that really took my sales career to the next level. So, without further ado, let's jump into today's video. So, let's talk about fear. So, fear is the hidden killer of so many sales deals, especially as a new sales rep. And really, what fear is, in another sense or another term, is it's a sense of uncertainty, it's a sense of doubt that the prospect is actually going to get the result that they desire. And that fear could come from their own self belief, their own self esteem. It could come from uncertainty in your actual solution to solve their problem and get them to where they want to get to. But it all boils down to the same way in terms of how you actually handle it. Um, and and yeah, it's really at this stage it's not even an objection, it's more so helping the person get out of their own way, because at this stage they are the objection, they themselves are the objection that's stopping them from moving forward. At this point, you've handled I need to think about it, you've handled money, you figured out that they have the money, you can make the money work, handled maybe spouse or partner objection. It's really the last piece of the puzzle to get them across the line, get them out of their own way, and close the deal. And there's really two ways that I've done this in the past that's worked for me. Number one is, I'm just thinking there's really 2 points. So there's analogy, using analogies, and there's also challenging their identity. Okay? As always, identity is such a huge part of sales. And that's really why I've made so many videos, and I'm always talking about self-image, because that's really about building your own identity as a sales rep. And probably the most powerful thing that I did in my sales career is to work on my self-image. So I'd say that's a prerequisite to effectively implement any of these sales strategies that I share, is really spending the time to build your self-image each day. And after this video, maybe go and watching my other video where I spoke about this in my own personal experience. But you could also use identity to make more money as a sales rep by challenging your prospect's identity. I'll get into more of that in a second. So really, it's about helping the prospect see where they're at from a different perspective. Okay, and it's really about changing the conversation and the thoughts in their mind from negative, where they're in a fear-driven state, to positive, where they want to push through that fear. Okay. And when it comes to actually getting them to admit that it is a little bit of fear so you can handle it, you have to be kind of delicate in the way you handle this, because I've mentioned this in other videos. Prospects have egos. Some of them are very arrogant, and you need to humble them. And many of them won't admit that they are fearful. But once you've handled every other objection and you've flushed everything out, you've taken care of everything else, the only other logical thing that it could be is fear, right? You've got them to a point, and really the easiest question to ask that would be, is it fair to say at this stage, Bob or Joe, that you do feel like this is what you need, now is the right time? It's just a little bit of uncertainty or fear or nerves perhaps with actually pulling the trigger. And that's really how I would phrase it, because if you can then get them to admit, you know what, yeah, it is a little bit of uncertainty. Then what you have to do, and what's worked well for me in the past, is to normalize, that fear. Okay, because if we can normalize it, and don't make a big deal about it, then it's going to be much easier to help them push through that. Okay, so what typically I say, good. As soon as they say yeah, they are a little bit nervous, I say good, and then I pause, and that can be a real pattern interrupt to get them to change their way of thinking. And I'll be like, look, it's good that you feel a little bit nervous, a little bit uncertain, because that means there's some weight to this decision, and nothing great ever came from someone who wasn't a little bit nervous before they pulled the trigger, right? And once I've normalized it, I'll be like, okay, but are you open to a little bit of coaching around that? And they say, yeah, do you know what, I am. And that's when I would proceed then to telling an analogy about getting on a plane. Okay. So the analogy I love to use is, let's say, Mr. Prospect, you want to fly to Hawaii. Okay. So we've got Hawaii over here. We've got the palm trees. We've got the prospect over here. And let's say they're in a not so nice country or not so nice place. So you can almost think of Hawaii like heaven, and you can think of wherever they're living over here, maybe like hell. Okay, let's say they're in hell. So let's say, Mr. Prospect, that you want to fly to Hawaii. But let's say you're a little bit of a nervous flyer. A lot of people don't like airplanes. But if they want to get to their destination, more often than not, they're going to get on the flight. So let's say Mr. Bob goes to the airport, and he's got this dream of going to Hawaii. He's got this vision. Even though he's going to be a little bit nervous coming to the steps of getting on the flight and boarding the plane, at some point he's going to have to trust the pilot and get on that plane, right? Even though there's no guarantee that that plane is going to touch down in Hawaii. Okay, because nothing in life is guaranteed, and that is the truth. So even though there's a very small percentage of that plane drops out of the sky, at some point he's going to have to get on that plane, trust the pilot to get him to the destination. And the only way that Mr. Prospect is going to feel 100% confident is when the plane lands in Hawaii, he gets off the plane, and his feet are actually on the ground in Hawaii. And I would then pivot that analogy to saying, and look, Mr. Prospect, in the case of you getting to whatever goal they've told me in discovery, for you to feel 100% confident to achieve X, Y, and Z through our help, The only way you're going to feel 100% confident is when we actually get you the result. But the only way for you to actually get the result is to make a decision. Do you see why that's the case? Yes or no? Okay. How do you feel now? Based on how they feel now, typically that changes their perspective, and they see where they're at, and they see that, okay, new way of thinking. It's essentially it's a new paradigm for them to view where they're at. It's very effective. Sometimes that's enough to get them into a new state where they're ready to pull the trigger. But oftentimes you'll have to maybe tell another analogy to really seal the deal. And this is where I typically would talk about identity. Okay. And to use this effectively, like any objection, the prerequisite is that you've done a good, solid discovery where they've told you in graphic detail, what the problem is, what the pain is, what the dream is, what the desire is. Because this is the point where you can really hold them accountable to who they told you earlier in the call that they want to become. Okay? And how I typically do that is say, look, Mr. Prospect, do you mind if I be brutally honest with you for a moment? It can also be called the truth hammer. And they say, yeah, go for it. Look, I mean, there's two people in this world. There is the 1% and there's the 99%. Okay? So the 99%, they feel that fear that you're feeling right now in the pit of your stomach. And even though they know what step to take in order to get them to where they want to get to, they let that fear take over and crumble. And they never achieve what they want to achieve in their lives. In contrast, you've got the 1%. The 1%er, despite feeling that fear, despite feeling that sense of uncertainty, when they know in their heart of hearts what the right decision is, they're able to push past that fear and achieve the results that 99% of people can't have in their life. Based on what you've told me of wanting to achieve, you know, X, Y, and Z in your life, I mean, which kind of person do you want to be? Typically, they say a 1%er. Okay. So if we pull that version of yourself from the future into today, that 1%er who's already achieved those goals, and let's say you're having a conversation with them, what decision do you think that version of yourself would tell you to make in this moment, despite feeling a little bit of fear? Prospect typically says, you would tell me to just push through it. Okay. So what are you going to do? I'm going to push through it. Boom, go for the close. Done. Very powerful. Very, very powerful stuff. Because identity, whenever you can get them to pull that version of themselves from the future into today, it ties in with the fact that humans will always act in accordance with who they believe themselves to be. And if you can get them to believe that in that moment, they're going to act consistent with that belief system. So this is incredibly powerful stuff. I've personally used it many times to get people across the line who are in that fear-driven state, and it works. Definitely take the time to practice it, to role play it, come up with your own analogies. Feel free to use these. But it's all about changing the way they're viewing this decision, normalizing the fear around it, and getting them to embody that future version of themselves, that higher self, so they can make a decision from that empowered identity. Hopefully, you found this video helpful. As always, I am creating a school community for high ticket sales professionals. It is a 10-day challenge where you can come in, we're going to work together for 10 days completely free to go through this stuff in more detail and to really elevate your self image and your skill set as a high ticket sales professional so you can start to increase your commissions without working harder. Okay. So yeah, that's really it. Feel free to get involved. I'm going to link everything down below, and I will see you in the next video.